The quiet arrival of a single white envelope at Kensington Palace set off a storm no one could have predicted. A DNA test that promised to reveal Diana's final secret. But when Kate opened it, the truth left her breathless. Trembling and in tears, it arrived. Unannounced, slipped into her morning post as though it were just another dull briefing from the palace advisors, but the seal was unfamiliar. Heavy wax, stamped with no recognizable crest, and the handwriting on the front bore no trace of the usual royal formalities. Kate hesitated at first, assuming it was a mistake, yet something about it, strange weight and ominous stillness in her chest made her tear it open. Anyway, inside a single page, a laboratory header she didn't recognize, in bold letters at the top reading, "Confidential DNA report." Her hands froze as her eyes scanned the lines below, the words clawing at her like a cold wind, names she knew too well, phrases she'd never thought she'd see. Together, the implications crashing down. Before her mind could even fully grasp them, the test compared her late mother-in-law Diana with another name she barely recognized, but now couldn't forget. And then came the shocking conclusion, written in stark clinical clarity, confirming what palace whispers had only dared hint at. Her breath caught, her throat tightened, and her fingers trembled so hard she nearly dropped the paper. She read it again and again, but the result didn't change. It couldn't be denied. What she was holding wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a time bomb wrapped in the quietest of envelopes, waiting to shatter the walls of Buckingham itself. She stumbled back, a step clutching the report to her chest as her eyes darted around the room. In the distance, the faint laughter of her children floated through the corridor, blissfully unaware of the storm that now raged in her heart as she stood there, memories of hushed conversations at dinner and sidelong glances from Charles over the years began to surface. Those moments she once dismissed as harmless, now tinged with an unmistakable truth she could no longer ignore. For months, perhaps years, there had been whispers, a hidden lineage, a child who carried Diana's blood, but not her name. Kate had always dismissed it as cruel gossip, but here, in her trembling hands, was proof that the monarchy's perfect facade masked something darker, something unspeakable. The timing could not have been worse. Tensions between her and Charles had already reached a breaking point over how she handled certain royal duties, but now she saw it in a different light. Had he known all along? Was this why he pushed so hard to control her image, to keep her in line? What she discovered could destroy the monarchy, and now she understood exactly why so many had worked so hard to keep it hidden. Kate sank into the nearest chair, her eyes fixed on the damning words, her cheeks wet before she even realized she was crying. The sound of her own soft sobs filled the otherwise silent room. She didn't know yet what to do, who to trust, or where to go from here. But one thing was certain: she could never unsee the truth. As Kate clutched the shocking results, memories of Diana's warnings and veiled words began to resurface, and the pieces started to fall into place. Before her tragic death, Diana left behind cryptic warnings, not just for her sons, but for the future queen. Words that Kate thought were sentimental suddenly carried a terrifying weight. Long before this day, Diana had woven her fears into words that no one had fully understood at the time, tucked away in her diary, written with the hurried, almost frantic hand of a woman trapped by walls closing in. She confessed to a truth too dangerous to tell. Kate now remembered seeing snippets of those entries once during an exhibition at Althorpe. The words painted as poetic sorrow. But standing here, clutching the DNA report, those same words pierced her differently. Diana had written, "One day she will know when She is strong enough. She will see why I could never say it out loud. Kate's hands shook as she remembered more. Letters Diana had sent to her closest confidant, a woman Kate barely knew, spoke about something she had discovered. Late in her marriage, a secret she, warned, must remain hidden at all costs. Those letters now impossible to dismiss, as paranoia hinted that the firm would go to any length to preserve its image, even if it meant silencing the truth forever. The way Diana wrote about them, not just as a family, but as a machine, calculating and merciless, sent a shiver through Kate as she pieced it all together. Even conversations Kate had with Charles years earlier took on a sinister light. He had once casually remarked that some parts of Diana's life were better left buried. His tone so sharp she hadn't dared to press him further, but now she could hear the disdain behind those words, the quiet threat embedded within them. It wasn't simply grief he carried. It was the weight of knowing. And then there was that foreshadowing connection, something no one dared say aloud, but everyone tiptoed around. Diana's time outside the palace, her discreet meetings, the shadow of a man who was never named but always present in her stories. Suddenly, it felt less like gossip and more like prophecy. Images of Diana's struggles and her public pain surged into Kate's mind. No longer just the history of a tragic princess, but a coded message of survival. She remembered the haunting photographs of Diana staring straight into the camera with defiance and fear in equal measure. Kate finally understood those looks were meant for someone, for her. This realization struck her with breathtaking clarity. Diana had not just left a trail of sadness and rebellion, she had left a path specifically for Kate carved through whispers, pages, and glances, so that one day when the time came, Kate would have the courage to follow it. And now, staring down that path, Kate felt the magnitude of what lay ahead pressing upon her chest like a leaden crown. Determined to uncover the full story, Kate embarked on a journey through Diana's hidden archives, but what she found there only deepened the mystery. Beneath the quiet halls of Diana's family estate lay a secret archive, guarded, dusty, and filled with revelations that no one dared to touch until now. Kate arrived at Althorpe under the pretense of a private retreat, a much-needed escape from London's prying eyes. To the staff, and even to William, she spoke of solitude and reflection, but deep down she knew she was there to confront the shadows of the past. The sprawling estate with its grandeur and silence seemed to hold its breath as she stepped through its doors. Every room whispered of Diana, of beauty, marred by betrayal, of secrets left unsaid. And it was in that silence that Kate felt a pull, knowing that somewhere within these walls was the next piece of the puzzle she'd been forced to follow. After a discreet word with one of the older housekeepers, a woman who'd served the Spencer family for decades, Kate was led to a part of the estate few ever saw. At the end of a long corridor stood a narrow door, its brass handle worn, its hinges stiff with years of disuse. The woman's hand lingered on the knob, her eyes meeting Kate's with an almost imperceptible warning before she quietly stepped away. Alone now, Kate opened the door and felt a rush of cold air, as though the room itself was exhaling decades of hidden truths. The room was small but heavy with history. Shelves lined the walls and boxes sat stacked in deliberate order. At first, it was nothing remarkable. Old portraits, dusty ledgers, delicate stationery bearing the Spencer crest. But then, in the corner, she noticed 3 boxes separate from the rest, tied with faded ribbons and marked in Diana's unmistakable hand. For Catherine, when the time is right, her heart thundered as she lifted the lid of the first box, revealing letters written in a hurried confessional tone. Diana's words spilled out like a woman desperate to preserve her truth before it was stolen from her. Kate read page after page of secret meetings, clandestine conversations, and quiet investigations Diana had undertaken into her own life. Among the papers lay photographs, faded but undeniable, showing Diana with a man Kate had never seen before. His features striking almost regal and yet hauntingly familiar. Beneath the letters and photos lay something that stopped her breath entirely. A sealed envelope labeled simply DNA. Kate opened it to find results that hinted Diana herself had already begun unraveling the mystery that now consumed her daughter-in-law. The implications were devastating. Diana hadn't just suspected something she had known. Kate's hands shook as she traced the man's face, committing it to memory. There was something about his expression, something in his eyes that sent a chill down her spine. He didn't belong to this family, yet he bore a claim to it that no one dared to speak of. And the realization dawned slowly and cruelly that she wasn't just following a trail. She was walking straight into a storm Diana had seen coming all along. As Kate traced the face from the photographs to royal records, she realized the truth was even more explosive than she'd imagined. His name was whispered only in the darkest corners of royal gossip. A man with Diana's eyes and a claim to the crown no one wanted to acknowledge. Kate stared at the photographs in her hands, her heart pounding as the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in the most impossible way. The man who appeared again and again in Diana's letters and photos, always at her side yet always just out of sight now, stood at the center of a secret too dangerous to speak aloud. His presence in Diana's life was no longer speculation. It was written in her own hand. Every page of her letters spoke of clandestine meetings, of moments stolen behind the palace's back. Diana had clearly known him before, and yet something in the way she wrote of him felt different, more than friendship. More than defiance, something intimate and undeniably deliberate. The resemblance was haunting. Kate could see it in the curve of his jaw, in the depth of his gaze, and the unruly dark hair that matched a face she thought she knew. It was Harry's face, or rather a mirror of it, matured and shadowed by years of exile. The likeness was so striking it sent a shiver down her spine. And it was this resemblance that fueled the ugliest of rumors. Could this man be more than Diana's confidant? Could he be the reason Harry always seemed to carry a quiet rage, a sense of not quite belonging? When Kate dug deeper, she uncovered records of his birth, or what should have been records. But as she searched the archives, it became clear that entire chapters of his existence had been erased. Official documents simply vanished, replaced with vague notes and sealed files, names crossed out, dates altered. It was as though someone had scoured every trace of him from history, leaving only whispers in the shadows. Her desperation for answers led her to one of Diana's oldest confidants, a woman Kate tracked down after weeks of quiet inquiries. When confronted, the woman initially refused to speak, her lips pressed tightly together. But when Kate placed the photograph on the table between them, something in her broke. In a low, trembling voice, she admitted what the palace had spent decades denying. The man in the picture was real, and his story was the final chapter of Diana's rebellion against the monarchy. He wasn't just a memory, he was alive. And he held the key to Diana's last act of defiance, an act that now threatened to upend the very foundation of the royal family. With each new revelation, Kate's world tilted further into chaos. Yet, even as fear tightened around her, she knew she couldn't stop now. Shaken but determined, Kate pressed forward. But her next discovery would bring her face to face with the one person she least expected to betray her. Beneath Charles' calm exterior was a man who had known the truth all along and done everything to bury it. Kate approached him with fire in her veins, clutching the evidence that had upended her world. She found him alone, seated in quiet contemplation, his hands folded as though he were already rehearsing excuses he might one day need. At first, his composure was unshaken. He barely looked at the papers she thrust in front of him, dismissing them as fabrications, insisting she was being misled by palace gossip and the ghosts of Diana's paranoia. But Kate stood her ground. And when she began reading aloud the words written in Diana's hand, The names, the dates, the meetings she had uncovered, his expression cracked just slightly enough for Kate to see what lay beneath the surface. He dropped the charade soon after, a tired sigh escaping him as he admitted what she already knew. Yes, he confessed the man she had discovered was real. And yes, he had been part of Diana's life in ways the public was never allowed to imagine. But what stunned Kate even more was the revelation that Charles had known from the beginning. In a low, defeated tone, he spoke of a decades-old pact, a quiet agreement forged in the aftermath of Diana's rebellion to keep the existence of this man hidden. The documents, the records, even whispers in the press were all suppressed to protect the monarchy. It was done to preserve the institution, he said flatly, as though those words could somehow justify it all. But to Kate, his justification sounded like betrayal. She felt her voice rise and her anger spilling out as she accused him of sacrificing Diana for the crown, of letting her suffer, letting her die under the weight of a secret he had the power to reveal, but chose not to. The words came sharp and fast, each one laced with disbelief at the cold calculations that had led to this moment. And yet, Charles remained firm, insisting that Diana's pain was a necessary cost of protecting the throne, that the truth would have caused irreparable harm. At that moment, Kate felt something inside her splinter. For all her years of loyalty, for all the ways she had upheld the palace's image, she finally saw herself reflected in Diana's struggle. She realized she, too, had become part of the machinery that silenced and buried truths in the name of duty, and it left her hollow, furious at him and at herself for having carried the weight of those lies without even knowing it. The weight of the truth threatened to crush Kate. But then came a voice from the past offering her the final piece of the puzzle. When Kate showed William the DNA results, the man known as the future king broke down, faced with an impossible choice between love and duty. She had waited until the children were asleep and the corridors were quiet, her hands still trembling as she placed the papers before him. At first, William barely glanced at them, his brow furrowed as though bracing for some minor indiscretion or family squabble. But as his eyes fell on the names, the dates, and the damning conclusions spelled out so plainly, his body stiffened. The silence between them deepened thick and suffocating until finally he looked up at her, and his expression alone told her he already knew. He tried to deny it at first, whispering that this couldn't be true, that the family had already suffered enough, that such things didn't happen anymore. But the weight of his own memories betrayed him. Kate watched as his disbelief melted into quiet devastation, the color draining from his face as memories of his mother, her whispered confessions, her tears streaked defiance, her desperate cries for someone to believe her came rushing back. And with those memories came something darker. Rage. Rage at the father who had stood by while she was silenced. Rage at the monarchy that had demanded her suffering for its own survival. For the first time, William allowed himself to wonder if everything he thought he knew about his family was a carefully constructed lie. His mind turned to Harry, the brother he loved but could never fully understand. And the realization struck him with brutal clarity. If what these results revealed was true, then Harry's entire life, his identity, his place in the family, his anguish had all been built on a deception none of them dared to name. William sat with his head in his hands, torn between two futures. One, where he buried this truth and continued to serve the crown as he had always been expected to, and another where he risked everything: his title, his family, the fragile threads that held the monarchy together, to expose what Diana had so desperately wanted to reveal. The choice was unbearable. Kate reached for his hand, then her own voice breaking as she pleaded with him to see what was at stake. She reminded him of Diana's courage, of the trail she had left behind for them to follow, of the pain she had endured in silence because no one dared to stand beside her. "Don't let her final secret die with you," Kate whispered. "Don't let her suffer in vain." Her words hung between them like a vow neither could ignore. William's eyes glistened, torn between the boy who had once promised his mother to protect her and the man who now carried the weight of a kingdom on his shoulders. But before William could decide, an unexpected ally stepped forward, forcing Kate into the spotlight she never wanted. While Kate and William wrestled with their grief, Camilla quietly prepared her next move, determined to protect her place at any cost. The whispers reached her before Kate and William had even finished arguing behind closed doors. In a palace that thrived on silence and secrets, nothing stayed hidden for long. Camilla had endured decades of judgment manipulation and calculated survival, and she had no intention of letting this revelation destroy everything she'd clawed her way to achieve. While others panicked and crumbled, she moved with the cool precision of someone who understood the stakes far better than anyone else in the room. Kate didn't see her coming. Camilla appeared in the doorway of her private sitting room without knocking, her expression calm, but her eyes sharp with something darker. Without raising her voice, she congratulated Kate on her discovery, as if it were some sort of grim milestone. Then she lowered herself into a chair opposite her and began, her tone deceptively warm, almost motherly. She spoke of how she, too, had known Diana's secret, how she'd watched from the sidelines as the pieces came together years before. And then, with chilling composure, she explained how she had turned that knowledge into power, ensuring her own place in the monarchy by keeping quiet when it mattered most. Kate could hardly believe what she was hearing. Every word Camilla spoke dripped with quiet menace, a testament to how far she'd gone to secure the crown that now sat so precariously on her head. And then came the threat, delivered with the kind of understated cruelty only Camilla could wield. If Kate dared to speak out, she warned she would not only destroy the monarchy but also herself. Camilla leaned closer, her words soft yet heavy with intent, suggesting that certain stories about Kate's own family, her past, and even her marriage would mysteriously find their way to the press. The air between them turned electric, the tension almost unbearable. Kate, who had spent years mastering the art of measured grace, felt her anger rise but kept her voice steady. She reminded Camilla that silence was exactly what had doomed Diana, that the truth deserved to see the light no matter the cost. But Camilla only smiled a smile that didn't reach her eyes and delivered her final warning. If you dare reveal this, you won't just take down the monarchy, you'll take yourself down with it. That night, Kate lay awake, her mind a storm of fury and fear. Camilla's words echoed in her head, poisoning her resolve, but failing to extinguish it entirely. She knew she couldn't let this stand. She couldn't keep hiding behind veils of propriety while the woman she admired most was buried deeper by lies. With nowhere left to turn and the walls closing in, Kate makes one final, desperate decision to go public. On a cold, gray morning outside Kensington, Kate faced the cameras, her voice breaking her tears unstoppable, as she revealed Diana's final secret to the world. It was a decision she'd made in the dead of night. After hours of sleepless deliberation and a silence so heavy it nearly crushed her. With nowhere left to turn and every door inside the palace closing against her, Kate chose defiance. She arranged a private press gathering, defying every rule of royal protocol, every expectation of obedience, and every threat that had been leveled against her. As dawn broke, reporters and photographers assembled outside the gates, their whispers thick with curiosity, sensing something monumental was about to unfold. When Kate finally emerged, the hush that fell over the crowd was instant. Standing before the world, her hands clutching the very papers that had ignited this firestorm, she began to speak. Her words were not just a confession, but a reckoning, the culmination of Diana's pain and her own. She spoke of the Princess of Wales not as a myth or symbol, but as a woman, brave, wounded, silenced by those sworn to protect her. She spoke of her courage to uncover truths others feared to face, and of the trail she left behind for someone strong enough to follow. Then, her hands trembling, she held up the DNA evidence. Her voice cracked as she confirmed what the monarchy had spent decades denying, that Diana had a hidden child. A son whose very existence was proof of everything she had suffered and everything she had tried to tell the world. The cameras captured every syllable, every tear that streaked down, down her cheeks every pause that filled the air with unbearable tension. The reaction was immediate and electric. Shock rippled across the crowd, their gasps audible as they struggled to absorb the weight of what she had said. Within minutes, the news flashed around the globe. Headlines screamed of betrayal, hidden heirs, and royal lies exposed at last. And then came the outpouring of support. A tide of voices rising to stand with her, hailing her, not just as a duchess or a future queen, but as the woman who finally spoke the truth Diana never could. Inside the palace, however, the mood was nothing short of chaos. The monarchy reeled from her announcement, their carefully constructed facade cracking before the entire world. Behind those gates, centuries of tradition and power trembled under the weight of what she had revealed. As the cameras flashed one last time, Kate's strength finally gave way. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed into William's arms, her tears soaking his shoulder as his own streamed down his face. In that embrace, they both knew nothing could ever be the same. Yet, even as the world began to process the revelation, the most haunting question still remained unanswered. What would become of Diana's hidden son? And then, at last, he appeared, the man whose existence rewrote the royal story, stepping into the light as cameras rolled and history held its breath. The world didn't know what to expect that day. After Kate's stunning confession and the storm of headlines that followed, speculation ran wild. Yet, nothing prepared anyone for the moment he stepped onto the podium. His presence calm yet commanding, as though the weight of his lineage and the years spent in the shadows had forged him into someone entirely beyond the monarchy's control. The crowd hushed as he adjusted the microphone, the silence stretching unbearably until he finally spoke. His statement was brief but powerful, laced with the raw emotion of a man who had waited his entire life to say his mother's name with pride. He called Diana his mother with no qualifiers, no apologies, and thanked Kate for having the courage he admitted he himself had lacked for so long. He spoke of the years he had spent knowing who he was, but choosing silence to protect her memory until now. Each word landed like a hammer blow, breaking through decades of carefully constructed illusions. But then came the question everyone feared and yet hungered to hear. Would he claim what was his? His eyes swept over the sea of faces before him, his jaw tight. And though he never said it outright, his measured words hinted at an unsettling possibility that his relationship with the crown, with his brothers, and with the entire royal order was far from over. Blood may have been denied, he said, but it cannot be erased. The meaning was clear enough for anyone listening. Inside the palace, the reaction was as immediate as it was divided. William and Harry stood apart, their expressions impossible to read, while Charles's grim silence spoke volumes. Camilla's face betrayed nothing but cold resolve. The family, once united in their unspoken rules, now stood fractured under the weight of a truth too heavy to bury again. Outside the palace gates, the public's response was no less volatile. Some saw him as a rightful heir to his place, others as a symbol of everything broken within the monarchy. There were calls for answers, for accountability, for a reckoning that no statement from the palace could possibly satisfy. And yet, amid the chaos, there were also tears of empathy, of grief, of solidarity with Dinah's son, who now stood before them unhidden. As he finished speaking, the cameras caught Kate watching from the sidelines, her hand resting protectively on her stomach as though vowing to shield her own children from the same pain. The memory of Diana hung over them all, her defiance and sorrow now vindicated, her story no longer a cautionary tale, but a revolution. As the palace gates closed and the cameras faded, one thing was certain: the monarchy would never be the same again. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next.